Okay, it's 11:30 and I'm going to go ahead and get started here with our discussion for today. I want to right away take care of a little housekeeping things. You can type messages into the live chat and feel free to do that. This is an open office hours discussion, even though I am going to be going through the Elara citation case. And for those of you that are new here, my name is Beth Pasek, and I am the owner and founder of Finicky Cat Sitting and Behavior and the author of Field Notes for Pet Pros, where safety and story come together. I've been writing on Substack about the pet sitting industry and some of the hazards and challenges that we face every day in pet sitting. And for those of you that are new, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. And for those of you that have hung around with me and stuck with me for the year, thank you. I appreciate that very much. If you hear some background noises, I can't do anything about that today. We are on location, or I am on location with Roger, who's our little hospice kitty. I don't know if you can see. He's that little dark spot. Right about there. He's right about there. There he is. That's Roger. And he's what we call one of our hospice kitty cases that we're dealing with. And we are seeing him through what will hopefully be a minor setback. And he will rally. And the beeping that you hear is not an alarm here in the apartment. That is noise from outside. There is a shop down below that is going into grand opening phase here for the weekend. So they're very busy getting supplies and things, last minute supplies brought in. So that's where we're at. And I want to thank everybody for taking the time either to stop in for the live or to catch it on a replay before it disappears. So today's live session, like I said, is an open office. And if nobody has immediate questions, I'm going to go ahead and just jump right into the citation. I am going to share my screen here, so don't go away. It'll be up in a minute. If you have never in your life seen such a thing as an OSHA citation, this is what it looks like. And generally they will come in. They will be a full packet, depending on what you're being cited for and what the concerns are. In the case of Elara Caring, which is Jordan Healthcare out of New England, they had a pretty bad incident involving one of their nurses where she was actually attacked by a patient. Get this up here. See if we can get this to move. Oh, for heaven's sakes. It moved a second ago. And she was actually attacked by one of patients she was seeing. And the citation and notification of a penalty occurred. In her case, unfortunately, this particular nurse ended up they described it as murdered. And I'm sharing this not to scare you, but to inform you of what some of the things are that happen when you have an actual reportable event. And you will get an inspection, and you will need to respond to that inspection and your notifications promptly. Your employees will be conferenced with. And let's get down here, because this is what I wanted to cover. Was they had a type of violation as willful, what is being described as willful and serious. And they're classifying that under OSHA Act of 1970, Section 5A1. And if you haven't figured out what that is yet, that's the one that I keep harping on throughout my Substack. That is your general duty clause, which they state it right here is the employer did not furnish employment and a place of employment which was free from recognized hazards that were causing or likely to cause death or serious physical harm to the employees from physical assault by patients who were exhibiting violent behavior resulting in serious injuries and death while working at Elara Caring. And the thing that I'm circling on this is, number one, the nurses had been notifying Elara of their concerns, and their concerns were being ignored or not responded to. And that led eventually to a licensed practical nurse, and it was a recurring hazard, which Elara's own documentation showed that, and it had not been properly mitigated. And what I saw, or what stood out to me in this particular case, is among other methods feasible and acceptable to abate the hazard, things that OSHA actually required of them, which was partly workplace violence and also lone worker hazard evaluations. And since this was a mobile home health care situation, I thought it was really applicable to consider what OSHA literally told Elara Healthcare and Jordan to implement to actually abate and meet the requirements of the law. So we're going to go through each one of these, and some of them are going to probably surprise you. One was to perform a risk assessment annually to assess the factors that put any healthcare employee at risk of workplace violence. For pet sitters, I would maybe read that as perform the same kind of assessment that puts any employee at risk for workplace violence, maybe that aggressive animal. Moving on. Develop and implement a written workplace violence prevention program that is responsive to Elara's annual workplace violence risk assessment. Okay, so we would need to do that for our team and our staff, and potentially for maybe some of the more reactive animals that we have to deal with. And this is going to be including, and this is where there's a distinction here, by including policies, what is your policy, and procedures, what is your SOP, and other controls used to protect against the hazard. And that entire program has to be reviewed annually or more frequently to respond to changes. Or more frequently, whew, well, that kind of sucked. What the heck happened? I don't know if we're still live. Are we still live? There we go. Are we back? I think. Wow. Didn't know. That was interesting. So they are literally looking at having an entire program and that it's reviewed annually or more often. And then they specify that there has to be that management commitment and employee involvement. They need to see the implementation of the written program. They need the analysis of the home environments upon new patient admission. That is really interesting. Analysis of the home environments upon new patient admission. We do meet and greets, but do we do an analysis of the home environment for hazards or things that could cause workplace violence? A hazard and prevention and control. Training and education, including resources for the impacted employees. Record keeping. All of that information has to be kept. Solicitation of employee feedback during the review process, which means not just a manager sitting going through visit reports. It's actually talking with your employees about what is potentially going on in a particular location. Establish and convene an ongoing workplace safety committee to address those issues related to the health and safety of the healthcare employees, including workplace violence. Notice that whole section, they're not talking just about workplace violence. They're talking about in-home hazards. They said to develop and implement policies. Here we go. This is, again, we're into that. Policies, what are your policies? And procedures that are going to require prompt, comprehensive investigation of all workplace violent incidents, including near misses, to address workplace violence hazards and identify corrective measures. Train all your employees who may come in contact with patients in a workplace violence prevention program. In our case, it would be just general workplace violence within a potential residence, or and I'm classifying workplace violence. I'm throwing animal aggression into this as well. That these are when we're dealing with our animals and our pets. Provide identifying information or photographs of the patients or the clients to your employees before the initial visit takes place. I don't think anybody does that. We don't ask for pictures of our clients, although we might do a Zoom call or a phone call. And it may be something worth saying, hey, text me your picture. Text me a selfie. So I know when I get to the front door that the person answering the door is who I'm actually supposed to be meeting with. That's an interesting concept. I don't think we've ever pursued that in pet sitting and dog walking. Contact via phone prior to visiting the patient or the resident to confirm the patient's location and any identifying characteristics. Develop and implement a system to obtain safety-related information. Now, this is interesting, such as background checks, history of violence reports, behavioral history, criminal history, any previous home assessments that have been done, any indications of risk, triggers, or coping strategies, and inform all clinical and non-clinical staff involved in the patient care of that information. Now, if we translate that into considering when you're going in to do your first meet and greet, how many of us actually do a quick search on the local sex offender websites? I know Ohio has an offender website, the public, that you can go and check. We ask, maybe over the phone or into the pet profiles as part of your onboarding, what are the risks and the triggers for the animals that we are going to be seeing? Do we know what they are before that first meet and greet? And does our staff know on each, if you have a team, each person needs to know that going in. Now we're getting into where I think some things really apply to mobile teams, and this is where I think there's a good overlap of what is going on in our world. Develop and implement procedures for tracking your employees' location when conducting home health visits that require employees and management to communicate and confirm the employee's safe arrival, their expected departure time, and check in when leaving the home health visit, and require managers to follow up with employees if they do not report when completing a visit. I want you to think about that. And I think a lot of us are immediately going, well, we have something like that in our software. But is somebody actually watching? Is your admin watching? Is your management team watching? Josie got to the visit at 9 a.m., but it's now 11, and she should have checked out at 9:30 a.m. Do we know what's happening there? Develop and implement policies and procedures. I hear this all the time in the groups. Write an SOP, write a standard operating procedure. Yes, you need a standard operating procedure for much of what you do. But before you're writing a standard operating procedure, you need to know what your policy is. And if you don't have a policy program yet, this is where we're going to have that ever loving merry-go-round of SOPs, instead of saying, hey, this is the policy, this is our policy, check in, check out, and this is our procedures of how to do a visit. So we need to look at that as pet sitting businesses. This was something that really surprised me. I wasn't prepared to see it. Maybe some of you are going to be just as surprised as I was. Provide emergency alert buttons to all clinical staff and non-clinical staff who visit patients or potential patients in remote locations, and provide training on this equipment and ensure the equipment is maintained and in working order at all times. How many of you have emergency alert buttons? Or are you trusting that your team is going to be able to use their phone in order to access emergency services? And this is a really interesting question to ponder, especially in light of that we're talking a lot about wearing body cams when we're on a visit. A body camera is an evidentiary tool. The panic button is the one personal protective equipment, basically, that is going to summon help. And when minutes count, that's what you want to have happening. We don't know. I want you to stop and think about how many times do you get into a client's home and you put your keys down, you put your phone down, and if something were to happen, you're cleaning a litter box. You're not holding your phone and cleaning the litter box, or it's in your back pocket where you have to struggle around to get it. And if you have someone attacking you in the home, there's a good chance you're going to drop the phone and now it's out of your reach. As where if you have a wearable panic button, that dynamic is going to change. And when minutes count between life and death, getting emergency services to you, that is something to think about. Provide personal safety devices for employees to use in hazardous situations, such as mace or pepper spray, to all clinical and non-clinical staff who represent patients or potential patients at a remote location, and provide training on the equipment and ensure that the equipment is maintained and in working order at all times. Then they go into position, medication lock boxes, which is not something that we generally have to worry about from most of the pet care industries, medications we come into contact with. And number 14 was allow clinicians to complete data entry in their vehicle rather than in the patient's residence, where data entry and attention to a tablet or screen is likely unsafe. So that was what their required abatement is for that first citation. And they were hit with a $161,323 penalty. The other citation was an other than serious citation. And this one is interesting from the standpoint that the employer did not provide the authorized government representative the records within the required 4 business hours. I want you to read that again. Records within the required 4 business hours, not 4 days, 4 hours. What were they looking for? They were looking for the OSHA 300 injury and illness logs from the previous years. And those logs didn't show up until 10 days after the initial request was made. And you can see that that added another $2,300 onto their penalties. So that is an actual OSHA citation. What it looks like, what you might expect. And I think from what we can see, what we can learn from this is taking a deeper, closer look at our own team, our own workplace violence programs. If you have one, if you don't have one, you probably should. And what does your lone worker safety protocol involve? And are you equipped? OSHA just told you exactly what they expect to see. So that's where we're at today. I hope you find this a little informational. I don't have anybody in chat for questions. And that's where we're going to call it a wrap today. Thanks for taking the time to view this either now or a little bit later today. You have a great day. Have a great day. And if you have any questions, feel free to message me right here on Substack.